There is a particular kind of person every great institution depends upon and almost never thanks. Not the famous one, not the face that sells the magazines. The one who simply arrives year after year and does the work while everyone else is being photographed. In the House of Windsor, that person is Princess Anne. She does not deal in scandal. She does not manufacture headlines. And yet, King Charles III depends upon his sister to keep the whole apparatus turning, and that dependence grows more visible by the month. Consider what changed when he came to the throne. In September of 2022, Charles inherited not only a crown but a question: how to make an ancient and expensive institution survive a skeptical age. His answer was to make it smaller. Fewer working royals, a tighter and leaner operation, a monarchy stripped back to its essentials. It reads well on paper. In practice, it means a simple and unforgiving arithmetic. When you reduce the number of people carrying the load, the ones who remain must carry more. And Anne had already, for the better part of 50 years, been carrying more than almost anyone, so she became, if such a thing is possible, even more essential than she already was. There was a quiet gesture early in the reign that told you everything. Charles chose to elevate his brother-in-law, Anne's husband, Sir Timothy Lawrence, to Knight Grand Cross of the Royal Victorian Order. This was no committee decision. No politician had a say in it. It happened in a private ceremony at Balmoral, and it was the king's own gift to give, the Royal Victorian Order being precisely that, an honor in the personal favor of the sovereign. And though it was paid to Timothy, it was not really about Timothy. It was a message about Anne. A king does not single out a man's husband for a private honor unless he means to say something about the woman beside him. What Charles was saying to the institution and to the world was that his sister had given her whole life to this and that he saw it, and that he would not let it pass unmarked. So let us speak plainly about what she actually does. In 2023, Princess Anne carried out 457 official engagements. Not a misprint. 457 separate events across the United Kingdom and beyond it in a single year. Different cities, different causes, different rooms, one after another. And in that same year, while her brother was still finding his feet as king, Charles carried out fewer engagements than she did. The princess was busier than the monarch, not out of rivalry and not to make a point. It is simply the rhythm she has kept her entire adult life, and she saw no reason to slow it for anyone. She began absurdly young. By the late 1960s and the early 1970s, when she was barely out of girlhood, she was already standing in for the Queen at official functions, doing the work of a senior royal, while most people her age were still deciding what to do with their lives. The schedule started then, and it never stopped. It only widened. By the time the monarchy entered its era of relentless cameras and ceaseless scrutiny, Anne was already built for it, already accustomed to the grind, already, in a word, indefatigable. So when Charles reshaped the family, he was not merely asking people to try harder. He was rebuilding the thing from the frame outward, trading a broad bench of working royals for a narrow and dependable few. And in that smaller arrangement, the value of a person who never falters becomes incalculable. He understands this exactly. At his coronation in May of 2023, Anne was given the role of gold stick in waiting and rode behind the gold state coach through the whole of the procession. This is not a courtesy handed out to keep a relative content. It is an ancient office of protection, reserved for the most senior and trusted figures near the sovereign, a position that places its holder at the monarch's back as a symbol of loyalty and defense. You do not give that to just anyone. Charles gave it to his sister because he knows, without having to ask, precisely whom he can rely upon. Those who study the household say the same. The royal commentator Robert Jobson, among others, has described Anne again and again as the one Charles can count on, especially when matters turn difficult. When the institution is under strain, she is the one who appears and does the work, without excuses, and without any need to be thanked for it. But here is what truly sets her apart, and it is something rarely discussed. She has lived through nearly every phase the modern monarchy has passed. She was born in 1950, an infant in the closing months of her grandfather's reign, King George VI, too young to remember a world still rebuilding from a war. Her grandfather died when she was a small child, and her mother became queen. And everything Anne has witnessed as a conscious participant has belonged to the long reign of Elizabeth II, almost certainly the most transformative stretch the crown has ever known. The institution had to learn mass media, then television, then the glare of the entire watching world, then the unwinding of empire, all of it shifting at once. And now she finds herself serving inside Charles's leaner vision of what the monarchy should be. She has seen every one of those passages with her own eyes. She carries a perspective no one else alive can claim, an instinct for how profoundly the role has changed that the younger royals, for all their gifts, simply cannot possess. She has lived the whole arc, and the patronages are real labor too, not decoration. She holds hundreds of them across the United Kingdom and the Commonwealth, military associations, hospitals and health charities, educational foundations, the lot. These are not names printed on letterheads. They are organizations that lean on her genuine attention and her long commitment to keep their work visible and their footing steady. She stays with them for the long haul. She does not appear once for the photograph and move on. She has become, almost without intending to, the example the next generation looks to. As Prince William takes on more, as the younger members feel their way into their roles, Anne stands there as a living definition of what serious royal service actually looks like. Not the version made for the internet, not the version built for headlines, but the real one, where you turn up again, and ask for nothing in return. The public has noticed. Regard for Anne has held firm across the decades and, if anything, has deepened of late. Commentators routinely name her among the most respected figures in the modern monarchy, and not for anything flashy or engineered. It is because she has been steady and reliable and present for an entire working life. She earned the reputation the only honest way there is, by doing the job for 50 years and declining to complain about it. Few people realize how deep her bond with the armed forces runs. Far past ceremony, she has held senior military appointments for decades. She has been Colonel of the Blues and Royals since 1998, and before that Colonel of the Royal Scots Dragoon Guards from 1995. And she has served as Admiral and Chief Commandant for Women in the Royal Navy since 2012 and as Royal Colonel of the 1st Battalion, the Rifles. And these are not badges she collects. She keeps genuine contact with the men and women who serve, appears at their parades, visits their bases, spends time with them and with their families. It is sustained, unglamorous, long-term work, and she has done it for the better part of her life. That bond traces back, in part, to who she is. Those who know her say she is very much her father's daughter, the late Prince Philip in her temperament. Both of them loved horses, both prized discipline and hard work. Both spoke directly, without a great deal of softening. She inherited his whole approach to duty, a man who believed in doing the work and never in being praised for it, and Anne embodies that creed as completely as ever did. But before any of this, before she was holding the institution up on her shoulders, Anne was an athlete. In 1976, she represented the United Kingdom at the Olympic Games in Montreal, competing in the equestrian 3-day event, and competing, crucially, as a genuine contender and not as some ornamental presence. She was a real athlete at a real Olympic standard, the first member of the British royal family ever to compete at the Games. That is no small thing. She was doing something demanding and physically dangerous at an international level, while also being who she was. It took nerve, and it took commitment, and she had both. And 2 years before she rode at those Games, she had already survived something far darker, something that is too rarely spoken of. On the 20th of March, 1974, traveling along the Mall near Buckingham Palace, Princess Anne was the target of an attempted kidnapping. Her car was forced to a halt, and an armed man tried to drag her from it. She refused to go. The episode ended without her being harmed. Several others were wounded protecting her, and her attacker was arrested. But it remains one of the gravest breaches of royal security in modern times, and a reminder of the genuine danger that senior royals live alongside. A man had pointed a gun at her and demanded she come with him, and her answer, in effect, was no. That is the kind of thing that forms a person. She had stared down real peril, and her response was to keep doing her job. She did not retreat from public life. She did not grow cautious. She simply carried on. Beyond the regiments, there has been her extraordinary loyalty to save the children. She took up the cause early in her public life and has held it for decades, and not as a figurehead. She has made field visits to the places where the work is done. She has raised money and argued the case on the international stage. She has traveled to meet children and families living with poverty, with conflict, with no access to medicine. That is real charitable labor, the work of someone who actually cares what the organization does, rather than someone content to lend a name. Her international duties have been vast. Across her working life, she has undertaken thousands of engagements overseas on behalf of the United Kingdom, in Europe and Africa and Asia, in Oceania and the Americas, diplomatic errands, cultural exchanges, charitable appearances, each one a small thread in the larger effort to hold the country's relationships together through royal presence. That, in the end, is what a senior royal is for. Anne has simply done it more steadily and more thoroughly than almost anyone. When Elizabeth II died in September of 2022, Anne played a deeply visible and deeply felt part in the days that followed. She accompanied her mother's coffin on much of its final journey, including the long procession from Balmoral down to London, through town after town across Scotland and England, ending in the great state ceremonies of the capital. Her presence spoke both of her place in the family and of her office within the state. It was among the most public and most emotional duties she has ever performed, and you could see in her face exactly what it cost her. The former royal press secretary, Dickie Arbiter, has described her as disciplined and focused, and praised her for, in his phrase, getting on with it, which is the thing people always reach for when they try to capture how hard she works and how little she says about it. And here the story turns, because for all the respect and all the labor, there appears to be one figure in the family who has never been quite so taken with Anne's devotion. That is Queen Camilla. It sounds dramatic, and perhaps it is, but there is real history beneath it that helps explain why the relationship between the two women has always seemed more formal than warm. Their connection runs further back than two marriages into the same family. It reaches into the early 1970s, long before Camilla married Charles, long before she belonged to the senior royal circle at all. In those years, Anne was young and moved through the same glittering world that royals and army officers and aristocrats all shared. The riding competitions, the parties, the country weekends, the places where everyone knew everyone. And in that world, by most accounts, Anne had a brief romance with a British army officer named Andrew Parker Bowles. It did not last, and it was never serious, and it ended without drama, both of them moving on. It would have been entirely forgotten but for one detail. Andrew Parker Bowles was also, in those same years, entangled with a young woman named Camilla Shand. The two of them had known each other a long while, had an on and off attachment already well established, shared the same circle and the same friends. In 1973, Parker Bowles married Camilla at the Guards Chapel in London. By then, Anne's brief involvement with him was over, and there was no visible tension between the women. But the fact that both had once been linked to the same man left a faint and curious thread between them, one that would only seem to matter much later. Years on, when Camilla's relationship with Charles became first an open secret and then a public scandal, people began to wonder whether Anne's old connection to Parker Bowles had colored the way she saw her. That question has fueled quiet speculation ever since. But it must be said plainly, neither Anne nor Camilla has ever spoken of it. There is no proof that the old history ever caused any genuine trouble between them. It remains speculation and nothing more solid than that. The real difficulty, in any case, came from elsewhere, and it came later with Charles and Diana. Anne was there on the 29th of July, 1981. When Charles married Diana at St. Paul's Cathedral, an enormous spectacle watched the world over. And she watched, in the years that followed, as that marriage began to fail and as the failure became unbearably public and unbearably painful for everyone caught inside it. She watched, too, as Diana grew into one of the most beloved figures the family had ever produced. Anne and Diana were nothing alike in temperament, yet by most accounts, Anne genuinely respected the younger woman's gift for reaching ordinary people. Diana transformed the way the royals worked with the public through the charity work of the 1980s and 90s, and Anne, who believed in service as deeply as anyone, understood the worth of what she was doing, even if the two of them went about it in wholly different ways. The collapse of that marriage became one of the worst crises the family had faced in living memory. Charles and Diana separated in December of 1992, and the divorce was made final in August of 1996. And through the whole of it, the monarchy lived under merciless pressure, the private agony inside the house and the relentless press outside it. It was a genuinely terrible passage for everyone close to them, and it is here that Camilla enters in earnest. As the marriage came apart, her relationship with Charles became a national subject, and it grew sharper still after Charles admitted, in a television interview in 1994, that he had been unfaithful. It grew sharper again after Diana's interview on the BBC's Panorama in 1995, when she said that there had been 3 people in her marriage. Once those words were spoken, Camilla's name belonged to the whole country, and a great many people decided she was the cause of it all, though the truth, as ever, was more tangled than that. Now, here is what matters about Anne through all of it. She said nothing in public. Not a word. That is simply who she is. A woman known for total silence on the family's private wounds. But those who watched the household believe she understood with perfect clarity how much damage was being done to the institution she served. She watched her brother's marriage disintegrate in the most public manner imaginable. She watched her sister-in-law endure a humiliation conducted in front of the world. She watched the crown itself take the blows, and she kept working. Through the 1990s, while the family weathered its great storm, Anne carried on with her engagements at home and abroad exactly as she always had. Duty and discipline, no appetite for the spotlight, no public comment. That silence is the whole of her method when matters turn delicate. Her loyalty has always belonged to the institution, never to the public quarrel. Camilla came into royal life by an entirely different road than Anne did, her relationship with Charles unfolding over many years before any marriage. Their experiences inside the system are therefore not remotely the same, and that gulf has often been offered as the reason their views on royal life do not quite align. They were shaped by the institution differently. Anne was born into it. Camilla entered it as an adult, under circumstances as complicated and as exposed as any in the family's history. Through all those years of controversy, Anne was never seen as a public champion of Charles and Camilla. She did not defend the relationship in interviews, but she did not condemn it either. She simply stood apart from the argument and attended to her work, which is exactly how she has always handled anything sensitive. When Charles and Camilla at last married, on the 9th of April 2005 at Windsor Guildhall, the country remained divided about it. Acceptance came slowly. Over years, as Camilla took on more duties and more charitable work and more appearances at Charles's side, Anne watched the whole of it unfold and simply continued her own steady labor. She made no statement. She changed nothing about how she worked. She did what she had always done. And even now, with all those years behind them and both women bound into the same family, the relationship between Anne and Camilla appears mostly formal. They stand together at the official events and the great ceremonies, but there is little public sign of any close friendship. Some commentators believe Anne may still hold a real tenderness for Diana's memory, and that it may have shaped how she came to regard the whole affair. But Anne has never confirmed it, and so that too remains outside interpretation, a thing observed rather than a thing known. After Charles became king, both women took up major duties, appearing together at state occasions, working side by side without visible friction, but the absence of conflict is not the presence of warmth, and many who watch the family suspect that Camilla is one relation to whom Anne has simply never grown close. What matters far more is whom she is close to, and that is where you see the real shape of her. The deepest of those bonds is with the king. Charles is her only brother, with not 2 years between them, and they were raised together at Buckingham Palace, 2 small children in the care of their parents, while the great machinery of monarchy turned around them. Their relationship matured into something founded on long experience and a shared understanding of what royal duty actually demands. Charles has shown again and again, through the ceremonial and state roles he has handed her, how completely he trusts her, and those near them describe her as among his most trusted confidants, never more so than in the upheaval of his becoming king. Her bond with Elizabeth II was built upon shared duty rather than open emotion. She accompanied her mother on official work at home and abroad for decades, and when the Queen died, it was Anne who traveled with her coffin on that last journey from Balmoral to London, One of the most moving passages of their long connection. Those who watched believe Anne inherited a great deal of her mother's discipline and her whole conception of public service. Her tie to Prince Philip was stronger still. She was so often called the child who most resembled him, in temperament above all. They both loved horses and sport. They both held discipline and hard work as something close to sacred. That shared devotion to riding forged a natural closeness between them, especially in her years as a competitor. In her own life, Sir Timothy Lawrence has been the steady presence. They married in December of 1992, after the end of her first marriage, and theirs has now lasted more than 3 decades. He accompanies her on engagements at home and overseas, has kept himself deliberately out of the limelight, and has quietly underpinned the punishing schedule and the constant travel of all these years. She shares a close bond with her daughter, Zara Tindall, the two of them joined by the same devotion to equestrian sport. Zara became an Olympic medalist at the London Games of 2012, taking silver in team eventing, and they remain one of the very few mother and daughter pairs to have reached Olympic success in the same discipline. Her relationship with her son, Peter Phillips, is of a different kind by design. Anne deliberately chose, when he was born in 1977, not to give him a royal title so that he might have a more private life beyond the structure of the family. And for all of that, Peter has stayed close to his mother throughout his life. With Prince Edward, she shares a strong working partnership, the two of them having represented the monarchy together at countless events. With Sophie, the Duchess of Edinburgh, she keeps a professional and respectful connection, both of them regarded as dependable workers who do the job without seeking attention for it. And her bond with Prince William has only grown firmer over time. She has supported him through his long approach to the role he will one day hold, the two of them sharing the same instinct for service over image, for substance over publicity. What it comes down to is this. Princess Anne represents something very particular in the modern monarchy. She is not the most famous of them. She is not the one who makes the headlines or stirs the drama. She is the one who actually makes the institution work. She has done it for decades, without complaint, without seeking recognition, without ever once making it about herself. And in a monarchy growing smaller and more concentrated by the year, that kind of steady, dependable service grows more valuable, not less. That is her real legacy. Not the scandals, not the controversy, not the family drama, but the long, unbroken decades of work that most people never even notice taking place. Tell me in the comments which detail changed the way you see this story. I read every single comment. Subscribe to the Royal Thread. Every story is connected, and the next thread is already being pulled.